I'm Tiffany.
And I'm Mark, and our marriage has survived an affair.
So we've been married, 17 years?
17 and a half years.
17 and a half. Do you remember how we met?
Oh, yeah. That was, seems just like yesterday sometimes.
Years ago to me.
No, I remember that I was working as assistant manager there at the Revco store, and this girl comes in, and I had just gotten back from being on summer break in Panama City, and very first day back, and this girl comes in and just catches my eye, and I was like, who is that? And I remember you just kind of walking through the store and making your purchase and walking out, and then later that day, taking the deposit to the bank and walking in, and lo and behold, the girl that had come into the store happened to be the teller at the bank, and I thought, wow, okay, here we go, let's turn on the charm. And then I guess I remember going back in and seeing you again, and then going back in and seeing you again, and then
You remember we had a two-way window there where I could see you walking over when I was back in the break room. I'd be at lunch, and I would see you walking through the parking lot.
I thought it was always so coincidental that you happened to walk out at the moment that I walked in.
But I could see you coming, and you thought it was a mirror, and you were kind of checking yourself.
I would be fixing myself in the mirror, walking in, tucking my shirt in and stuff.
And I was watching you
and
the whole
you were
time.
watching the whole time? Yeah. I remember that day that I walked in there to the break room with you and went, oh, okay.
Realized I had been watching out that window.
Yep.
But I always made an excuse to go out to the teller line when you came in.
Yeah.
And I remember my grandmother telling me, Tiffany, somebody, somebody called asking for you, and she said, he asked, is Tiffany there? And I said, well, is she supposed to be? And found out later that it was you calling every porter in the book to see.
Trying to find out trying to find you.
And you got my grandmother first.
Yeah, and then finally got your house. And I called your house, and they said, she's at a wedding shower. And I said, it's not hers, is it? Yeah, I remember that.
So finally got up the nerve to ask me out.
Yeah.
And you remember what I said?
She said, I remember you saying, as long as it's not Chop House in a movie. And I remember
said be original.
Yeah,
none
be
of
original.
None
of this Chop House in a movie. And of course, I had planned Chop House in a movie. So I remember going home to my dad that night and going, Dad, what do I do? And he goes, well, you can come up with something. And I'm like, yeah, but I'm poor. And then he or my mom, one, suggested Barter Theater. So I thought, okay, well, we'll do this. So I'll made reservations at the Martha Washington for dinner, and then to Barter, and
snagged me with that
crazy.
First date.
Driving up there, going to see Man of La Mancha. Didn't know you were gonna live the impossible
dream the
impossible dream.
Yeah.
But that was neat. But that first night, I knew that first night.
So that 3 months later, pretty much to the, well, no, it was about 3 months later.
From our first date, yeah.
You took me back to the Martha.
Washington, because I had other plans. And then I was like, hey, let's, we need to go to, I need to take something to my grandmother up in Meadowview. And while we're doing it, why don't we stop at Martha Washington and see the Christmas decorations? And you were like, okay. So I remember going up there and walking in, and we walked in, there was that big, almost a thing almost like this, except it's marble right in the middle. And then walking up the stairs, and you were a couple stairs ahead of me, and I said something like, wait a minute, or something.
I don't remember. I just remember you getting down on your knee
in
the foyer and asking me to be your wife, and the ladies giggling over it.
All the people watching us. Yeah.
But then us getting married almost to the day, a year after we met.
Yeah.
So it was kind of a whirlwind, and I guess when we got married, there was a lot that we didn't know about each other. And I can remember sitting in the limousine on the way to the,
right after getting married.
After the wedding, on the way to the reception, and thinking, what have we done?
I'm thinking, what do I talk about?
Now what?
Because we've had this wedding to plan for 6 months, and it just it was over with. But then we got there, and I don't remember any of that. I mean, it was just all went through so quick.
And the honeymoon was great, and my favorite place on earth, Disney World.
Disney World, yeah.
And we had a great time, and I remember the first year of our marriage was so good, and just I couldn't wait to get home to see you. And we would try to sneak in calls when we could throughout the day, and of course we didn't all have cell phones back then, but just I couldn't wait to be with you. I mean, it was wonderful. And then I guess for me anyway, reality kind of hit when during the first pregnancy.
The one that we lost.
Yeah, and I was really sick, and then we ended up losing the baby, and I was devastated. And I just remember I just wanted to mope around, I guess, depressed and, just trying to grieve and everything. And I just remember you saying, if you would just get up and do something, you'd feel a lot better. And I was just like, he does not get me. He so does not get me.
I was coming from my background of walk it off. If it hurts, walk it off, and toughen up, and, with the family, the backgrounds, and how that all were, you didn't have time for that. You went on and you moved forward, and you didn't talk about it, and you just went. Yeah.
Those walls started being built. I remember one time one of the kids was sick, and you liked it clean. You liked it clean, especially that kitchen table. You remember I always piled stuff on the kitchen table, and you couldn't stand it.
Yeah.
And so I would try really hard not to put stuff on the kitchen table. And I remember one day I had worked really hard to clean the house, and one of the kids had a fever, and I'd given them Tylenol, and the whole house was spotless except the Tylenol. I had left it sitting on the counter. And you came home from work, and it wasn't even, hi, Tiffany, how was your day? It was, what's the Tylenol doing here? And it just made me furious. And I think, all those things like that just built walls, because I felt like you were, like you didn't appreciate me. You didn't appreciate the things that I did. You didn't understand me. You didn't even try. And, we were very different. And, you came from a more structured, things had to be done this way, and that's the way it is kind of background. And that wasn't me at all. So I think that started those bricks in the wall,
One of the things that I always think about, remember when we were engaged, and went to one of my friend's bachelor parties, and you asked what had happened at the bachelor party.
Yeah.
And I told you.
Yes.
And
I threw.
And you handed me my engagement ring back.
It, I don't know. Or threw it.
But at that moment, though, I remember up until that point in time, I'd always wanted somebody to like me. That was my whole purpose. Is I just wanted people to like me, and the people that were in my life, including any female relationships up to that point, that wouldn't have been something that ever bothered any of them. And then when the person that I'd already asked to marry me and I loved, when I told you that, you were furious. And I was like, whoa, wait a minute, this isn't the reaction that I expected. And I think at that moment, one of the first blocks in my wall started, because I was like, wow, I don't know if I can be completely honest all the time. Not because I didn't want to be honest, but because I didn't want to hurt you, And I almost felt like, man, I can't really share everything 100%. Not because of me, but I don't want to hurt her.
But it was because of you, because
I wanted you to like me.
Right.
Yeah.
You didn't want to disappoint me.
Yeah. And that's how pretty much the pattern of my life was always do what it takes to make other people happy and to make people like you. And one of the struggles that I had in our early days is that you had much more wisdom and you were more of the spiritual leader of our family than I ever could have been. I had been brought up in church, but I'd never really, it was really a legalistic type thing and never really knew about having a relationship. And I was always really challenged too about how can I be the head of this household if I'm not the true spiritual leader. But do you remember our vows? Remember how, we by writing them and how they were just so real and so just, we had people coming up to you after the wedding going, wow, where did that, and we're like, well, that came from the heart, and we know that they came from God on both of us. I mean, they flash forward all these years then to where we're having, we've had 2 kids at home now, and things are going good in our careers, and you're still my career, you're still a stay-at-home mom, but I started looking for love from you in the way that I remember my dad and mom's relationship being, if you love me, you'll have these things done for me. Remember? If you'll take care of my house, you'll take care, the dinner will be made and the living room will be spotless and the clothes will be washed and everything will be ironed, and because I'm working hard to provide this for you, so if you love me, you make sure that this is all done. And that was the example that I remember how mad you used to get.
I remember one time you told me
talking about my mom.
My mom vacuumed every day. And I remember me turning around and I said, well, I'm glad you remember that about your mom. I don't want my kids to remember that about me. I want them to say, my mom played games with me and my mom did this. And I didn't want them to remember me cleaning house. But we just came from totally different backgrounds.
Well, I came from, divorced home, and divorce was pretty much rampant in my dad's side of the family. But,
and it was completely opposite. My grandparents celebrated their 70th wedding anniversary.
Both of them, yeah.
And my parents have been married, I don't know now, 46 years, something like that.
Yeah.
So I ended up getting a membership at the Y, as at a charity auction. And I joined myself and was going a lot. Still, I wasn't losing any weight. It just kept dropping off of you, but I couldn't lose any. And I was getting jealous. I was jealous of you losing the weight. I was jealous of you getting the attention you were getting from not just people in general, but women and, younger women, pretty women. And I was getting very jealous and jealous of the time that you were spending doing it. Angry that you weren't spending that time with me or with the kids, but I started going to the Y, and of course, I wasn't losing any weight, but I was working out there, and I thought, well, maybe this would be a good way for us to.
Well, we wanted to get the whole family.
Yeah, to spend time with the whole family. So we got the family membership, and I can specifically remember my sister warning me about the Y. Actually, she was warning me, about a gym in general, and just, be careful. Stuff happens there. There's a lot of ego, a lot of stuff goes on at a gym. And during this time, I remember noticing one particular girl from the Y that would comment on all your Facebook posts. Anything you said on there, she always had something to say about it. And she was young, but she was married, and I just kind of tried to push all that aside, but it was just kind of raising suspicions in me. And then that Christmas, you went out to the car after working out one day, and there was a present on your car, and it was a pair of $130 basic tennis shoes, running shoes. And it was anonymous, of course, and I thought, $130 for a pair of tennis shoes. And at first I thought it was one of your running buddies, and then I thought, no, they're
then you asked them all, didn't you?
Yeah, I did, but I thought they're too cheap for that. They wouldn't spend $130. But I remember one of your running buddies who was also a member of the Y, I asked him, I need the truth from you. I said, did you get these for Mark, these shoes? And he said, no, I swear I didn't. He said, in fact, I got home and had a box of goo, which, the running gels, on my front porch. He said, somebody loves me. And a box of goo, I guess, would cost about $30. Yeah. And I told him, I said, well, Mark got a pair of $130 tennis shoes. I think somebody loves him more. And it just really struck me. I suspected her after that. But of course, I would say something to you and you would, oh, Tiffany, you're crazy. You're crazy. It wasn't her. I'm sure it wasn't her. You're crazy. And every time I started suspecting, you would, shoot it down. Tiffany, that's crazy. That's crazy. Well, she comments on everything on your face. We're just friends. We're just friends. Mm-hmm. And March came. Mm-hmm. That March, on a Friday night.
2010.
March of 2010. That Friday night, something just made me do it. I know it was God that made me do it. But I went to your Facebook and went to her Facebook from your Facebook because she wasn't a friend of mine. She never even talked to me.
You got that?
And I wrote her phone number down off of her Facebook page. And I looked at that phone number and I played all the games with it and added all the numbers and,
hoping it would add up to the
666 or something. No, I don't know. But I just went through all those games with that number. I just stared at it and burned it into my brain. And I didn't know what I was going to do with it. I thought, I can't snoop on him. I can't, do I really want to go here? Do I really want to suspect him like this and accuse him of doing something like this? And the very next morning,
there was a text message.
Yeah, you were getting ready for a race.
About our friend Don.
And your phone buzzed. Mm-hmm. And it said, we lost our friend in a car wreck last night. And I looked at the number, and it was the same number I had memorized. And I looked at the name, and it said Danielle HMG. This girl's name wasn't Danielle. Mm-hmm. And I thought, why is he trying to hide her number in his phone? He's got her number saved in his phone under another person's name. This isn't good. And I immediately, my heart raced, my hands started sweating, and my blood pressure, I'm sure, skyrocketed. And I walked into you and I handed you your phone and I said, you got a message. And you read the message and you kind of fell back and you were just like, oh my God, because our friend had died. And I was crying at this point, and I said, as bad as that is, this is not our worst problem right now.
Mm-hmm. I remember. I was there. It was not one of my proudest moments, but like in my normal fashion, I kind of fell into that kind of that joking fashion that you and I always had about, Mark, you're always about deny, make counter accusations. That'll get you through anything. Deny it. And so I did. And I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know. There's nothing going on. We're just friends. I think I even said that. And we're just friends. We just talk. We have things in common. And then
you did actually admit to wrong, but that was the wrong. I know I shouldn't have hid our friendship from you. Mm-hmm. I just was afraid you would get angry, and we're just friends. We're just friends. I remember I wanted so badly to believe you, and the weirdest thing about that morning, I think, was the fact that you still went to that race.
Yeah,
and ran that
ready
race.
For a race that morning. Yeah,
and I think that kind of speaks to how, how important all that had become to you, all that running and the racing and the being, the winning and the getting those awards.
Well, here I was at all of a sudden, here I'm at mid 40 years old, and now all these accolades are coming, which were, you know, I mean, they were very meaningless in the world's eyes, but in my eyes, all of a sudden, it's the recognition and trophies, and the newspapers doing a article on me. Remember, on me and my brother for running Boston together, and and it was almost like a type of fame almost. I mean, it was my 15 minutes, and I couldn't understand how you didn't appreciate that. And and here that day, it was another race, and that's what I went to work and I had a family, but I lived for running and for racing. I mean, that was actually my whole identity was kind of caught up in that.
And in the meantime, I'm feeling very neglected, and I had placed so much stock in what you thought of me. I had placed so much of my security in you, and felt that all that was being ripped out from under me by other loves of yours. And I was so dependent on you.
Yeah. And
so that fueled my anger, and I was such a nag. I know I was, but I going back to that morning, you went to that race, and while you were gone, all these thoughts and memories and things started flooding my mind of, what had been going on in secret, and what I didn't know I was making up in my mind at that time anyway. And I can remember just the anger building, and you called me on your way home and told me, Tiffany, there was a deep friendship there, and it shouldn't have been there, and I know it was wrong. And I got so angry, and I locked all the doors.
Yep,
and you didn't.
Keys.
Yeah, I took all the keys.
Get in the house.
You couldn't, because you didn't carry a house key to the race. And I took all the house keys from outside, locked all the doors, told the kids not to answer the door, even for your daddy.
Yeah.
And which I'm very ashamed of. But you came home and started knocking on the windows, yelling at us to let you in, and I wouldn't let you in. I told you just to leave, just to go. And I can remember hearing you turn and start to walk across the front porch to leave, and I couldn't stop myself. I
came out the door.
Came running out the door and punched you in the face, and you have your little scar there to prove it.
That's what the engagement ring. If we'd got a bigger rock, I would have been in more trouble.
But I was so angry. But when I punched you, it was kind of at that point that I was like, oh no. It's like immediate regret. I've done it. I've done it now. I've broken the law. I've assaulted him. He's going to take my kids. And it was kind of that stop place for me of...
Because I was bleeding pretty good. Remember?
Yeah, you were. So I was like, wait, don't leave. Let's talk. So maybe it was the grace of God that I punched you in the face. I don't know. But so we go back in and talk, and I start naming off, okay, no more Facebook, no more YMCA, no more talking, no more this, no more that. And
I dropped all of it, remember?
Yeah, but I was laying down the law. I mean, I was saying this is the way it's going to be. That night, I was actually a teacher at church, teaching Sunday school to the 5th and 6th graders. And there were so many times I learned more from my planning for those lessons than anything else. But that night, the lesson came out of 1 Peter chapter 2, and I was just reading through it. In 1 Peter chapter 2, it talks about slaves being obedient to their masters, being submissive to their masters. And it says, if you endure punishment, if you haven't earned the punishment, but you endure it, that's commendable to God. It says even a harsh master to submit to him. And then in the very next chapter, it talks about how Jesus submitted. Even though he didn't deserve the punishment, he submitted to it for us. He was beaten and put on a cross for us, and he didn't deserve it. And then the very next chapter there, it says, in wives, in the same way, submit to your husbands. And I read that and it just broke my heart. And I knew that God was telling me, you've got to submit to him. He might be a harsh master, but you've got to submit to him. And so that very night I went out and apologized to you for making those rules. And I said, I have no right to do that. You're in authority over me. It was a struggle, but that's where I felt God was saying, lay down your life for him. I knew, even though you didn't admit it at the time, I knew in my heart that you hadn't been faithful to me. And I knew that I had a biblical out of our marriage, that biblically, the Bible says you can divorce because of infidelity. And I knew that biblically I could, but I'd never felt that freedom to leave. And in fact, I felt God saying, be his Hosea, show him unconditional love. He has never had that. He's never felt that love.
It's hard to believe that this went on for 6 more months? 6 more months.
Actually, it was 8. 8 more months.
8 more months.
And I didn't know that it was still going on.
No.
I totally believed in that you had an affair, but I thought once I had found out in March that it was over. Mm-hmm. And I didn't see any way that you could have been doing it because I was watching everything.
Every move. Yeah, I know.
And I didn't see how you could, but I had no idea. But I knew that our relationship wasn't the same. Our relationship wasn't healed, even though I had told you, that I forgave you. And I even told you, I confronted you, you
used to say that the truth will set you free.
Tell me the truth.
The truth will set you free. The night that I think one of the biggest turning points was that night that you continually were grabbing me and praying for me. And I was not me. There was
I remember. Do you remember?
Something raging in me.
Yes, because I prayed for you. And God taught me so much. He taught me his voice. Because I had nowhere else to turn. All my life I had depended on men. Yeah. And I was so dependent on you. And I couldn't even tell my parents about this because I didn't want them to hate you. And I hadn't told any of my family or anything about it. And I had nowhere else to turn but to God. And he caught me. He just, his arms were just out there to catch me because I had nowhere else to go. And I learned his voice, just like the Bible verses, in Peter, that very night he spoke to me through the Bible. He did that over and over, and songs, at church, and songs on the radio, and the sunset and the sunrise. I just felt like he was speaking to me, and I learned to hear his voice, and I heard him saying to me, pray for him, lay down your life for him, be his Hosea. He is your Gomer. He's going out and, just go after him, love him like I do, like I loved you, like I've loved all of you. When you've gone out and turned your back on me and prostituted against me, I still love you. Show him that. And I would pray for you every day. I had a thing from Family Life that talked about praying for your husband, and I would go through that every single day. And I remember that one night I was talking to you about it, and I was telling you, the truth will set you free, Mark. It'll set you free, and you've got to deal with the truth. That's the only way. And I was just wanting you to admit it to me that you had an affair. No, you wouldn't. And you were so hard. And I can remember praying for you and you turning around and saying something to me about fear, that I was, because fear had always been a thing in my life, and you were like throwing it at me, and I turned around and I said, that's a lie. God has freed me from that. And it's like just the power of God, just the Holy Spirit, and came over me, and he had been teaching me the power of his name. And so I was praying for you, and I just put my hands on you at that point, and I started praying, God, please, I just pray against a spirit of pride. I pray against a
And I
spirit.
wouldn't let you touch me.
And you threw my hands off of you. You said, you got up and you said, don't ever touch me again without my permission.
Mm-hmm.
And you remember what I did? I put my hands on your shoulders, and I said, Jesus, 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 Jesus.
Yeah.
And you pushed me against the wall.
Yeah.
And you said, I said, don't touch me. And your face was hard as a rock. I mean, it's like your eyes were black. And we lived like that for 8 months.
Yeah. But at that time, I felt like that I was in so deep in my sin. The demon, the Satan was just lying to me, and then you don't deserve it. You don't deserve it. So then I started justifying why I was doing this. Look, she doesn't love you. She doesn't do this. She doesn't do that. She doesn't, whatever, fill in the blank. And Mark, you deserve better than that. You deserve somebody that will tell you how great you are all the time, and you deserve. But it was killing me. I mean, literally killing. And over 8 months, I mean, it just was just worse and worse and worse and worse. And I mean, it was like I was living in two worlds. Here I am. I'm at church on Sundays. I'm trying to act like nothing's happening. But inside, I'm just crumbling. And Sanctus Real, that song comes out. Lead me. And we would be in the car, and that would come on, and it would rip me apart.
And the kids learned it.
And the kids would, yeah.
I downloaded it. And the kids learned it, and they would sit in the car and sing that song.
Yeah. And I mean, and it was just shredding me apart. And it finally got, after all that time, I never wanted to leave. I never wanted a divorce. This wasn't about me trying to hurt you. This was about me trying to fulfill the emptiness of things that I had growing up in my life. It was about the pride. It was about being liked. It was about, all those things that are the baggage that we were pulling through our lives. It had all come to the pinnacle. It was all there. And, finally, do you remember it was Thanksgiving, and the kids were at your parents' house, and we were there at our house by ourselves. And that night was the biggest, probably, I think about the story of, was it Jacob that wrestled with the angel and got, I felt like that whole night I was just wrestling with, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? I cannot live like this. I was dying. I got down, I was skin and bones.
Yeah, I lost weight.
I looked, I remember and black rings around my eyes, and it was killing me. I remember waking up that morning, and how did it even start?
I was praying for you.
I was asleep?
We started talking. Yeah, we had just woken up, and we were talking about it. And it was strange because we would talk about it, but you would never tell me the truth. It was like you wanted it to come out, but you would never actually say it. And that morning, we were talking about it, and I started praying for you.
I think that was like November 28th or something like that. Yeah.
And I started praying for you, and you said, Tiffany, I don't deserve your prayers. And I said, Mark, that's the only thing. I said, that's the only thing that's going to help us is God. I said, we've got to get to the bottom of this. We've got to get to the root of this. I said, you've got to tell me the truth. And
I remember what I said then.
I said, I've already
because you were still wanting me to say that I'd had
an affair,
the affair back in April.
Before March, yeah.
And
that you had the affair.
That's all you were going for.
Yeah, and I said, just tell me the truth. And I said, you know that I have already forgiven you for this. And you turned around and looked at me, and I will never, ever, ever forget your eyes, because they were blue almost. It was like they were light, where I had been looking into those dark eyes for months, and they were light. And you said, even if it's still going on. And I remember I felt like I was going to throw up. And I jumped up out of the bed, and it just washed over me. You have forgiven him. Mm-hmm. And I turned around and said it. I've forgiven you.
And then you came back and hugged me. Yep.
And it was at that point, you know, that point of truth and forgiveness that God had already walked me through the forgiveness. That our marriage just, you know, God did a work and started healing our marriage right then.
Yeah, right then.
And, you know, it's there's still been times when it's hard. I mean, the pain of having to deal with, you know, sitting there with my husband the very next day in church. And seeing Ted and Charlene, who had done a marriage class.
We had been through here we were the whole time that I was doing that. We went through a marriage class together.
And
which was part of it, because if we hadn't done that, I don't think I ever would have, you know.
And we went to the prayer room with Ted and Charlene. And
I remember asking them, like, can you all come in here for a minute? And then we just dropped it.
Blah. Told them the whole story. And
then Ted said,
they said, you have to cut this off with her. And you said, can I do it right now?
Yeah.
And you called her from the prayer room. Mm-hmm. But it ripped my heart out just to hear you talking to her. Mm-hmm. But you told her that you had been lying to her and to me and to yourself, and that you were sorry. Which at the time I didn't even want to hear it, that you were sorry to her.
But you know, that was the moment when my weights were gone. I mean, I was free. But all I did was pick it up and go here.
But no, you know, in those 8 months.
Here, it's yours.
But in those 8 months, I had learned to go here, you know?
Yeah.
And we were able to work through it amazingly. I mean, there was so much pain, and I had to forgive her. I never talked to her, but I had to forgive her. And that was even harder because I didn't love her. I loved you. I didn't love her. And, you know, I had to make that decision to forgive. And there's still times when it's hard. But I know that I have forgiven her. And I made that decision in my mind. And I know that my feelings will eventually follow it wholeheartedly. But there are still times when it's hard. But, you know, the thing about it is that through all of this, our marriage is stronger now.
It's, well, you're my best friend again. Not only have you shown me your unconditional love, but I mean, you showed me the absolute love of God. I mean, everybody wants to experience some kind of miraculous sign or what, healing, or, you know, I'm still Mark and I still have, but at the same time, I know that I mean, just, he used you as that outlet to me. And it could have turned out a lot different. It could have turned out a lot different, but I'm so looking forward to what the next 18 years of being married. Can you believe we've almost been married? We look better. We don't look that old. But, you know, as you said before, you know, your grandparents, both sets of grandparents were married for, you know, ever. You know, your mother's father and mother had their 70th anniversary before your grandmother passed away. And I want to be there with you one day, God willing. I mean, I want to for us to experience that together. And, you know, we wondered that first day in the limousine, what would we have to talk about? You know, and I think we've got quite a lot to this point. You know, and you know what do we always ask your grandfather, or what I do? You know, he's 92 years old, and I'm like, what did y'all talk about for 70 years? But I'm just looking forward to that. Love you.
Mm-hmm.